Every night is the Rangers Journal night.
Right, hello everyone. A very warm welcome to the Rangers Journal on this bonfire night. Now, there may be fireworks outside, but there's definitely a few rockets in here. Well, mainly me, to be fair, but there we go. I'm Andrew, and you may know me from the Ibrox Channel podcast. The Ibrox Channel podcast is now under the Rangers Journal umbrella, so you will see the show on the network probably from next week. But I'm sitting in the hot seat today to take charge, is that the word, of this Q&A session that we're going to have. So there's plenty to talk about. We've got a lot of questions in already, and I've got a fantastic panel who are going to answer all your questions. So there we go. So we've got Ross. How you doing, Ross? You good?
Good evening, Andrew. Good evening, Kev. Good evening, Rich. And to our listeners, yeah, it's been all right. You know, I think outside everybody's house seems like a recreation of the Battle of Passchendaele. If you're not into fireworks, I think you just want to kind of avoid it. But no, good. Hopefully, get some good questions and some good chat going.
Oh, fantastic. And Mitch, how you doing? You're looking very suave there.
I'm trying my best to, mate. I'm just styling out the fact that I've not brushed the hair after putting the hair in for a shower. But I no bad, boys. Like, Kev, it's always a pleasure to see you. And Ross, I think this is the second time you and I have done one together, is that right?
Indeed, it is.
Always a pleasure with you, Andrew. You and I have done this too many times.
Oh, you're a smooth talker. That'll get you far in life. And of course, we got the wonderful Kev as well. How you doing, Kev?
Hi, I'm great. Enjoying the fireworks to a wee slow drive home with the windies down. And there's something about the smell in there in fireworks now.
Oh, it's lovely, isn't it? I love that as well.
It's good. I don't know if that's strange or not. I thought that was weird admitting that in the pod. But,
see if you hear a chap in the door about midnight, it's just the police coming to take you.
Yeah, I know.
Looking for that pyromaniac they've been looking for. Yeah, no. Good to have you all on, guys. It's a fantastic lineup we got tonight. But before we get started, of course, I would just like to give a shout out to Premier VPN, which is the Rangers Journal's sponsor. It's fast, safe, and private VPN. If you're looking for one, go with Premier VPN. Now, we've got a lot of questions there in the feed, so we are going to get started. So I'm just going to load these up now. So we've got quite a few good questions. We've got a good one in from Doug to kick us off. So Cherny and Bajrami appear to be building up an understanding, playing well together and creating goals and assists. Are they the key to future success this season? So I'll ask you this one, Ross. What do you reckon?
I mean, they're probably the two that actually look like, you know, good footballers. I think Kearney's taken a little bit longer to settle in. He did have the really bad miss against Lyon, which he himself was open and honest about how it affected him. And I think you need to, you know, and be happy and, you know, respectful that he's come out and admitted that. And from then, he's actually been on a pretty good bit of form. You know, he's scoring goals, he's contributing. I think he's perhaps taken a little bit longer to adapt to the physicality. He's not the first player who's played at, you know, the level he has to struggle with that. So it's not unusual, but I think he's started to really push on. I think he was probably the standout player in the second half for us on Sunday against Motherwell. You know, he was really driving us on, and I think that when you use a guy like that with his assets, he's obviously got good feet and he's got a good left foot on him. You want to enhance that, and you want to get the best out of him. Bajrami Bajrami playing on the left. Sorry. He looks like the star signing for me. He's been the best signing we've had over the summer. He really looks like he's got a bit of quality. He's hard working. He can finish. He's got quick feet. He's built up a good relationship already with Jeffy, and I think that's been a really, really impressive. We know Jeffy's kind of been hit or miss, but that's okay. Guys got to learn. But I think we've been the two that if we can get the best out of them consistently, then we could really be onto something special.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah, no, I do like the look of Bajrami. He's a fantastic footballer. He was one of the few in the Lyon game that just looked fantastic, didn't he? But would you reckon, Mitch, Cherny and Bajrami, are they the future for Rangers?
Well, Cherny, as we all know, fits my agenda for streamlined wingers, so we'll have to keep him there. But my only issue with Cherny is knowing fine well there's a very good chance he's not with us next season because there's no obligations, no options. There might be something that can get thrashed out because he does look like, as the boys have said, you know, Ross touched on it earlier on there, he took a little while to get settled when he joined. And I think he probably needed the wobble against Lyon in the game that followed. Like, just to kind of give himself a wee bit of a shake to say, I deserve to be here. He now plays like a player that deserves to wear the jersey. And I think, watching Bajrami, some of his movement on and off the ball are, and some of the touches, as we all know, are simply gorgeous. What he can do with the ball, you see him thread it through the eye of the needle so nicely. And I think that the only frustration I've got is I don't want to give him the left wing. I want to give him that number 10 where he plays so well for his national team and he's played so well previously. Like, let me see him in the 10. Put that deft a touch, and the fact that he does break his neck to get into the box and make things happen, I think that helps the strike force as well. It helps that front three, having somebody else that will be that box-to-box player as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we can see elements because, of course, when you look at Czerny, he started okay, then kind of drifted off a little bit, and then became very, I guess, one-dimensional is what's the kind of the phrase used a lot for him. Sadly, but then he's taken that miss against Malmo and he's pulled his socks up and really knuckled down, I think. But what do you reckon, Kev? Are Bajrami and Czerny the future for Rangers?
Probably similar to what Mitch is saying. I think future, I don't know with Czerny. I think Bajrami certainly. I think from the first couple of months, I wasn't really too sure on Czerny, if I'd even be that bothered about us not making that loan permanent. I think probably from what he's shown in the last sort of 5 or 6 games, I would be keen if there's an option there and the fees right, the wages are right, then yeah, definitely I would like to explore that option. I think he's definitely, just sticking on Czerny for a second, I think he's shown what it probably takes to get a starting position in our team. I think being able to hold himself accountable for some of the misses. I know you mentioned the Malmo one. I think the Lyon one was an absolute shocker. If I was to put myself in the position, I don't think I'd play again. So I think it says a lot about his character, how he's been able to bounce back from that. I think he's definitely getting a lot of stick from the fans at that point, where people were questioning, why did we get this guy in here? He's terrible. But I think he's very similar to Sima in a way, where Sima started his Rangers career so slow and then all of a sudden became a fan's favourite. I think he's probably given a similar vibe to what Sima did.
Do you know what? It seems to be a common theme, doesn't it, in recent years with Rangers players? You don't get a Rangers player coming and just hit the ground running, do you? We're not treated to that. We have to go through the motions of absolutely detesting someone, and then they come good. So there you go, Mitch. Dessers might get into that category at some point, but there we go. So speaking of Dessers, we'll stay on that subject. Well, who do you think is going to be, if Dessers does go, who do you think the natural replacement is for him? Is it Danilo or Igmane, or is it going to be someone else entirely? So obviously, Dessers is still under contract. He's somebody himself actively wanted to stay at the club in the summer. He's probably got a bit of a point to prove now. He got back on the score sheet at the weekend. So what do you think? I'm going to ask you this one, Ross. What do you think? Danilo or Igmane, who do you think is the most natural replacement if we don't have Dessers?
It's hard, to be honest. I think that when Danilo was signed, he was probably the guy that they wanted to be the number 9. I mean, I don't think we're in a position to spend £6 million on a centre forward to not have him be the guy. But at the same time, we spent £4.5 million on Dessers, so I've no idea what. I think we could have hours and hours of content trying to understand what Michael Beale was thinking when he signed those 2 guys at the same time. But they are the guys that are available. I think Hamza Igman, we've seen flashes of what he's got in ability-wise, what he's got talent-wise. There's still so much he needs to learn and he needs to improve on before he could be remotely considered the first choice. Danilo, I said, he's had his injury problems. I don't think it's a Rangers team if you don't have a big money signing that's out for 2 or 3 months at a time. It's just what we do. If I had the choice and if I was the decision maker, I'd be looking for somebody completely different. I would be looking for somebody, because I just don't think that, sorry Mitch, Cyril Dessers is not the man to lead the line for Rangers long term. I know we're going to fall out, it's all right. Danilo, we don't get enough out of him, and I think Igman, we've all admitted is a project player. Philippe Clement said himself that if we didn't buy him this summer, we probably wouldn't be able to afford him. That's put a lot of pressure on a young guy like that. But I think we really need to, I'd be questioning the scouting team if we don't seriously go and find a proper centre forward. If we're insisting on playing with one guy up front, we need somebody that can do far more than what Cyril Dessers or even Danilo or Hamza Gaman can do.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair assessment. To be fair, now I'm gonna go on to you now, Mitch. Of course, as the sole member of the Cyril Dessers RSC and founding member, do you actually first? I'll ask a slightly different question. Do you see there being a future for Dessers after this season? And
Yeah.
can you see if he does go, Danilo or Igmani being those replacements for him, or do you think it'll be someone different?
I'll be honest, I see him staying, and I think he's very comfortable here. He's very happy here. He knows what it's about here as well. With him staying, now I do caveat this before Ross and Kev both burst a blood vessel in their heads. I caveat that as he will not stay as the first choice striker. And I don't think, when you look at the outlay, with Danilo and Dessers, he was never intended to be the first choice striker. By virtue of the fact that everybody else is made of cheese strings and, held together by hopes and prayers, he has been the only option really for the last, we'll call it from the last full season, from November to November now. And, it's a point I've made in previous pods as well of, it's so easy to keep pointing the finger at the guy who's always there week in, week out. Any other team in the world, when you've got a striker that's going through a bit of a rough time, you have that option to say, do you know what, son, come sit off for a wee bit. We'll put you on with 20 minutes to go. We'll give you a run out and we kind of fake it till you make it with a bit of form. And I will say, we've seen glimmers of that in the last few games there. The assist up in Aberdeen. We've seen it with a goal at the weekend. Let's call a spade a spade. It was a goal that changed the game. Whether you want to admit it out loud or not, the equaliser halted the momentum and brought us back into the game. And he's scored at Champions League level for us. He's scored in Europa League level for us. He's scored in the cup fight. He's scored in cup games for us. He's scored against every team in Scotland. And yet we do, myself included, you do find yourself pointing a finger at him going, come on, son, just how do you miss the ones that are so easy to score, but score the ones that are so easy, so hard to score, Sometimes it makes it hard for people like myself who love him dearly. He's frustrating, but I think, and we've seen, but then I think on the flip side to that, we've seen what Danilo brings to the table when he's, even currently half fit. We've seen what he brings to the table. It's a different type of striker. And arguably, I would like to see the two of them as a pairing, but that's just me. But I don't know if that's, too much of a sicko in me that wants to see that, But I think, there's a way that you can incorporate it. I think Igmani's definitely a project player, and we were told that from day one. I do think, call it not next season, but the season after, that's probably the season where Dessers does leave. And I think that's the season that Igmani steps in and striker 3 comes in from elsewhere, and that will be the next project player that comes in. Right now there's money that needs to be spent elsewhere in the park, and having experienced strikers like Dessers in there, they're hard to come by in this marketplace and the market that we are shopping in.
Very wise words, Mitch. The oracle of Dessers information. Now, I can see a little glint in your eye when you talk about him. That's no, fair play. No, very valid points, Mitch. To be fair, personally myself, there is a place for Dessers, but he does need to be rested when he's not in form, and that's something that he's not getting that quality, that ability to be able to do at the minute. But Kev, do you agree with Mitch there?
Do you know, I was actually dying for you to ask me, to be fair. I think if you were going to move on question, I was just going to still put a point across about Dessers. But you'll know, I tried to actually back up Dessers at the beginning of the season. I actually thought we may be starting to see some improvements in his game. I think if I was Rangers, and I'd be surprised if they weren't thinking about it, I think they'll try and do anything to try and get a fee for him in January, if I'm honest. I don't even think it's just the missed chances for me that causes me an issue or causes me to get frustration, because, listen, every striker misses chances. I think if you look at our rivals across the city, and their number one striker in Kyogo, he misses a lot of chances. He missed a big one at the weekend. But I don't think it's that causes me the frustration. I think Dessers is one of the main reasons why our attacking play is so slow. It breaks down all the time. I think when you look at some of I think he's got this ability to pull off the difficult pass, but I think some of the straightforward passes, he just doesn't play in the right way, or he'll play back to the centre backs when he could maybe play in the likes of Lawrence, Bajrami, Cherny. I think he is the main issue that we've got up top right now. And I think when we seen Danilo come on, I think he actually made a difference in terms of his movement, his link-up play, and things started to move a bit faster. There's no surprise. I was talking to my dad about this earlier on, and big shout out to my dad who will likely be watching. But we were talking about it earlier about the lack of penalties, for example, that we've got this season, and a lot of that stems down to like our attacking play is so poor right now. And I think when you've got that main striker leading the line, it's up to him to try and bring other players into play the way our setup is built around. And I think that is the major problem for me with Dessers. It's not that he misses chances, because every striker's going to miss chances. But I think what Danilo brings to that setup is probably what Clement's preference is going to be. So I think the big hope for Clement, for us as Rangers fans, is that Danilo just gets fit and gets a run of games. Because he will no doubt be our number one striker if fit. But to the point of keep him as a backup, personally, I think he's on too much money to keep as a backup as well. So I think for me, I'd be looking to try and explore other options. Maybe the likes of, if I was to pick a backup between, say, a Shankland or a Dessers, I would take Shankland on less money. I know this season people might be like, oh, he's not in form. There could be many reasons towards that. So I think a striker that has been on top form, scoring plenty of goals the last 2 seasons, doesn't all of a sudden just become a bad player. I think there's a lot of circumstances where he comes into his last year of his contract. We've had plenty of players in that space who seem to down tools in the final year of their contract because they don't want to risk getting injured, especially at his age. So I think for me, I don't think he suits as a number one striker, and I don't think I'd keep him as a backup on his wage either, personally. But Mitch, I know you're gutted, but hopefully we can move on. You didn't even get a chance to come back at me.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, that's the thing. I think what is interesting about Dessers is he does create this debate, and it's very polar opposites. And that's the thing in Glasgow. You're either amazing or you're terrible. It's one or the other. And for me personally, I think there is a place for Dessers, but can he be the main out-and-out striker every week with not many backup options? It just doesn't seem the way at the minute. But yeah, we'll move on now. We'll move on. Ross, we'll bring you back in from one Ross to another. Got a great question here. If you had to take back a player from last season who he released, who would it be? So that's an interesting one, because are there any that you think you might want to keep a hold of? You think?
No. Sorry, Ross. No, I wouldn't have. I think when the ones that we let go, it was time for them to go. I think if you look at the players that we released in it, I'm assuming he's talking about the ones that have kind of left on a free. Obviously, Ryan Jack, John Lundstrom, Borna Barisic. What have they done since they've left? I don't think they've done anything to really justify, staying. I think that of all the players that we let go at all, the only one that I would have made an argument for keeping would have been Abdallah Sima if we could have afforded that. But obviously that didn't work out after getting knocked out of the Champions League, which is fine, you accept it. But in terms of the players we kept, keeping the ones on a free, I don't think any of them really deserved to stay. I think we had to move forward. We were a team that held on to that core for far too long. I think it was becoming more detrimental than anything. Barisic should have been sold 2 seasons before. I remember there was a point where we thought he was getting sold after. I think there was a game we beat Celtic at Ibrox, and he kind of had a bit of an emotional moment in the park, and I think we all thought he was getting sold at that point. I think after we beat them 1-0 after COVID, he didn't leave. John Lundstrom, I think for 6 weeks he was the best on earth. Apart from that, there wasn't any reason to keep him, and I'll be brutal, and that's just my opinion. That's fine. Ryan Jack, cool. He's all right to have about the training ground and the treatment room, but I think we should have looked for an upgrade, and I think we've got it in Connor Barron. I think Connor Barron's got the chance to develop into the player that we want, that we thought we would get 50 games out of Ryan Jack of. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that Connor Barron's got those kind of the same kind of mentality, the same kind of drive, the same kind of energy. But in terms of keeping any of them on, especially on some of them on the salaries they've been on when we had to cost cut, I couldn't have justified any of it, to be brutally honest with you.
Yeah, no, to be fair, you're not wrong. I think, for me, like Paul has said here, I think that there seems to be, we're missing that kind of Scotty Arfield replacement, aren't we, per se? Obviously, what you're saying about Barron, 100% correct. He's definitely a player that's going to be, I think, very big for us in the future. But Mitch, would you reckon, are there any players you would have kept from last season?
Probably, and again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I probably would have said Lunny, and it's going to be I'm aware it's a controversial one to kind of throw out there, but I think there has been times this season, maybe in big games, where they've just needed somebody nasty in the midfield, and there's a bit of a lack of depth there. But, and I'm putting wages to the side of the conversation entirely, so I'm just wages aside. I would say probably it would have to have been Lunny, and it is a pure. It wouldn't have been my starter. It would have been a player that big match experience. He probably should have maybe been given a 1-year deal, like with a 1+1 or something, like, you know. But I think again though, does that then hinder the development of the likes of Raskin coming back and the likes of Cora Barron? I don't think it necessarily hinders them, but I don't necessarily. It's a hard one. I do think of any of them, it would have been probably Lunny, and it would have been purely down to that lack of depth in the midfield. Because let's be honest, we are a suspension and, you know, somebody being injured away in the midfield from, you know, again putting Sterling back in the midfield where he shouldn't be.
Very. I wouldn't have expected you to say Lundstrom, to be fair, but yeah, no, that's an interesting one.
I like a wild man, mate. That's my problem.
Kev, what about yourself? Are there any players that you would have kept from last season, or is it best to leave the past in the past? Do you go back to the X? That's what we're asking here.
I hate to agree with Mitch, in all fairness, but I suppose we may agree on something. No, but probably, I think if we could just bring one player back, which would be for me Lundstrom, just until we found a replacement, it would probably be that sort of player that if I had to pick, then it would definitely be one that I would look at. I think we just didn't get a number 6, and I think that's been our problem this season. I think we're trying to put players into a position that's just not suited to them. I think Racing coming in, I think he's starting to play that role quite well. I think he seems to be the deep line midfielder, but I think we probably have missed that aggression. I think the athleticism as well that Lundstrom brought. I think although some people might have questioned some questionable moments, there was one under Gio, was it St Johnson? Come on, I can't remember, when he sort of loses possession and just sort of throws his arms up in there and gives in, it causes a goal. But I think when you actually watch them, in the majority of the time, even when he had a bad game, he covered so much ground, Lundstrom. And I think he gave freedom to other players to go and play in that midfield. Whereas I think that's probably what we've lacked, is that sort of athleticism and strength in the middle of the park. Someone that's able to run about, make tackles, break up play, do the sort of dirty side of the game that probably doesn't get the props, like maybe some of the other positions do. But at the same time, listen, I'd probably also be equally disappointed if it gets to January and we brought in Lundstrom. I'd rather be going and get a new number 6 and not go back the way. But I think if I had to pick someone that got released, then that would be the only one I would say. I think the rest of them, time is way past up.
Yeah, no, that is fair. You know, I would agree with that. You know, I think a lot of us would be disappointed if we saw on deadline day in January, when we're fighting for third place, John Lundstrom signs a 6-month loan deal. Obviously, a lot of people have been talking about Ryan Kent. Been released, obviously, out in Turkey. Hasn't quite worked out for him out there. I did like the one from Doug. Obviously, Sakala from the season before. I really like Sakala. Yes, he could miss a chance, but that smile. What a guy. What a guy. Obviously, there's a good little bit here. If you are looking at Olympiacos and what to expect from them on Thursday, head over to the pod. Check it out, because Doug's done a fantastic video. So do check that out, guys, because, it's not long away now. A couple of days for that game. So we'll get through some more comments. We've got a few more here. There's quite a big list of comments, so keep them coming, guys, as I'm going through them all now. So let's look at Sunday's games. One from Ben here. Do we believe the brave changes made by Clement can be a catalyst for a turnaround, or do we still feel the writing is on the wall? Because, of course, we did see a little bit of some slight tactical changes in the second half, and obviously personnel changes. A big move bringing James Tavernier off, who just wasn't having a good game at all. So start with you, Ross. Do you think there can be a turnaround now? Do you think Clement is learning that he does need to change things up, or is it going to be more of the same over the next few weeks?
I mean, I think we'll find out sooner rather than later if he is truly learning. But I think to play a bit of devil's dick advocate at the moment, I think the manager's onto a bit of a hiding, because if people are waiting for us to lose to essentially get him the sack, and if he wins, then it's, well, we should be winning. The only way that he's going to be able to change the narrative is by continuously winning. And that's the thing, that the cycle we've been in, is that if we win games like this, nobody really cares because we should be winning, and we're just essentially waiting for, you know, the inevitable disaster. The thing that he does quite well, we're obviously talking about the changes he makes, they do change the game. He takes off Cyril Dessers, he takes off James Tavernier, and he puts on Danilo, and he puts on Dujon Sterling, and immediately we see the things that we've been speaking about the team lacking, which is obviously a bit of physicality, energy, drive, and a bit of determination. I think that's been something that I think we've all admitted has probably been lacking within the Rangers, the Rangers team over the last, maybe up to a year, I suppose, if you want to be really pedantic. I suppose it's one of those things that if the manager wants to keep his job, he's got to change, despite the fact that, he did say before the cup game that he was going to stick to his formation. That's fine. If you have a formation, you want to play it, that's fine, but you need to play guys that can play the formation and play it the way that you're going to win football games. And I know that sounds really simple, but at the moment we're a team that don't do the simple things well enough. I don't think that we play quick enough. We've spoke before about, how we can be quite slow and pedestrian, and I think that just when you change that and you have guys in the team that can play a bit quicker, I think we've seen the midfield being quicker. I think Raskin and Barron have built up a relationship where they do have more energy, and I think that, just that building block to start, you can build a basis from it, but you can't then have that and then revert back to the old guard. I think we're at a stage now where I think most of us will admit that, Tavernier he needs to kind of be phased out of the team. He's becoming more of a hindrance than some of us want to admit, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. He's 33. He's played far more football than any of us will have ever dreamed to have played at the highest level. But instead of persisting with it, there's nothing wrong with phasing him out and bringing in somebody younger. That's just the nature of the game. It's not a bad thing. I think we've already had a discussion on Dessers, and I think if Mitch has to talk about Dessers again, I think I can see his face. He's thinking, I think we're going to end up having another argument. But no, it's one of those things that you need to think about what's best for the team at this moment in time, and the manager needs to do that. He needs to think about what's best for what's going to get him the results and the performances that's going to keep him in a job at this moment in time. I don't think he can't be everybody's pal. I think we've learned that he's not one for being the friends with the players. He has had a few run-ins already with kind of Cantwell, and he said I think there's been disagreements with Jack Butland, and I seen a column, I think it was today or yesterday, from Alan Hutton talking about him falling out with Dujon Sterling, and it was just nonsense, just clickbait nonsense, to be honest with you. But it's a believable story. But there's nothing wrong with a manager's personality being a bit standoffish. You don't want them to be their best pals and picking guys just because you like them. That's not the way football should be. Who likes their manager? Who in any job likes their manager? Let's be honest. But if you can go out there and you can do the job for him, then everybody benefits out of it. That's the way it should be. You should be doing it for the benefit of your employers and the benefit of the club and the supporters who pay a fortune every week. Guys take time off. That was one of those things that annoyed me about the Aberdeen game, was the way we played. We were so lackadaisical, and you get guys that take time off, leave their families, pay an absolute fortune to get up there, and they don't even get guys that try, who are getting 35 grand a week. It's just, and that's the issue. That's the issue I've got with it. But if he can make the changes and he can put a team on the park that have got a bit of energy, a bit of drive and determination, the tactics will then take care of themselves if he puts them out in the kind of correct manner. Do you know what I mean? And I think that if that happens, then that's where he's got to start. And if we keep doing that, then and he keeps winning games, then we can't really complain.
Oh, we are Rangers fans. I'm sure we'll find something to complain about. Don't you worry, Ross. No, but that's a very good assessment of the situation, because I do agree. I think if you've got some players that aren't necessarily, I don't want to say footballers don't try, because, you know, that's not the wrong term to use, but, you know, if somebody's not giving their all, and, you know, if there's a bit of backtracking, you know, and they're just not doing it, then you need to address it. And it looks like Clement maybe is starting a little bit. What do you reckon, Mitch? Do you think that there will be a turnaround now? Do you think them changes are a catalyst for that, or is it the inevitable that's coming up?
The chat about him getting sacked needs to be parked to the side, because it's not going to happen. Realistically, it's not going to happen. You know, there's not been anywhere near any murmurings or even a couple of warning shots from what is left of the current board and the makeup of, you know, the senior group. I think what a lot of people, myself included at times, are very guilty of is forgetting that he's currently operating with 1.5 hands tied behind his back. You know, there's budgetary issues in terms of obviously the finances, which have just been well publicised for everybody. He's had 2 to 3 seasons with you know, poor recruitment previous that, again, players, yes, brought in for low money but on high wages, which makes them hard to ship back out. And I think what we've seen on Sunday was him potentially drawing that team that finished on Sunday, I think looked very much like the Clement team that should be going forward. And I think there was possibly elements, and I'm going to speak against the grain ever so slightly. There looked at certain points, particularly in the first half, there were players that had been brought in, and, you know, in the summer there, that looked like they were ready to run through a wall for, you know, for Clement, the likes of Bajrami, Tierney, looking like they would do anything to find something. And then you looked around the park and some of the older guards, I'm not going to accuse them of a lack of effort, but, you know, could they have been doing a bit more, shall we say? You know, I'll leave that open to interpretation. You know, and I think when he made those changes, the likes of Danilo's came on. If you're a player that's been out injured for as long as Danilo has, and your manager's had the patience with you that Clement has had, tell me that you're not going to go and run through a wall for the man. You know, at no point has he ever thrown him under a bus when he broke down with the last injury. Clement never threw him under the bus there and went, you know what, he's got legs made of cheese, like, he's stuffed. Like, you know, it's one of these ones of, you know, where he's... But I also think as well there's a slight tide turning with Clement as well, where there are new players and the young project players like Igamani, for example, that will continue to get managerial support. If he makes a mistake, makes an error, he will be protected, as he should be, because he's still young, he's new, he's raw, and he's genuinely quite an exciting prospect. When you have seasoned players going out there putting in 2 to 3 honking performances in a row, I think the time for we're a collective group and, you know, the manager taking the full brunt from the players, I think we've reached the point where if Clement's went, you know what, no, that's not going to happen, and I'm not going to talk about it to the press. Everybody's just going to see it with the actions on the field of, do you start the next game? Do you not start the next game? Are you completing a game or are you not? And I think maybe that's actually the best thing for him, is just less words, more doing.
Less words, more doing. That's something I definitely like to see. So, Kev, I'm going to kind of ask you a slightly different question, but along the same lines. Obviously, there was a lot of chat as the season started, especially from John Bennett at the time, with that they are fully entrenched in what Clement is going to do. Clement is a very big part of what they are looking to do at the club. With all the stuff that's been said and the contract extension, of course, it looks like it is a long haul kind of rebuild without kind of saying that necessarily. Do you think that things will get better now that we're actually possibly going to stick with a manager? Has that ever really worked? Now, I know there's examples like maybe Alex Ferguson's anyone I can think of where he was had a terrible time with United. But has there been any other managers that have been able to, when you get to this point where things really aren't going well, they're kind of a bit rigid in some of their tactics and personnel, can it ever work?
I think in modern day football, no. I think probably the reason why you're struggling to think of an example is because it just doesn't happen anymore. I don't think Rangers can avoid to take the gamble that it might work eventually. I don't think we can afford, looking at our finances that got published last week, I don't think we can afford to come third. I think when there starts to be complexities around European qualification, having zero attempt at Champions League football, it actually creates a difficult path for Europa League football. I think the board will get to a point where if things don't improve, then they will make a change. I know Bennett had come out and he'd done his media duties before he stepped down to say that we will be sticking with him. We won't be chopping and changing managers. We're going to change that cycle. Which, listen, I agree with that. We can't be a club that sack a manager every single season. That's why we're in the financial mess that we're in at the moment, because of the costings behind it. However, at the same time, I don't think that's a reason to stick with the wrong guy. And listen, I think based on what I've seen so far, I think Clement probably will go. Do I think my mind could be changed in that? Absolutely. I think if we come in and we can actually see changes to not necessarily the formation, but maybe the personnel within the formation, I think once he does get wingers back, whether that be Cortez or to a lesser extent Matondo, that actually suits that style more. He's playing a style right now that we need quick wingers, and we don't have any quick wingers. So I think the stubbornness to not change has probably been the biggest bugbear for me, because I think could we have changed our shape just for the time being until we got these players back to put in better performances, maybe get better results at times. I think absolutely. I think it's strange. Where I found it probably the more frustrating is it's not as if he's like incapable to make big calls, to take players out, to drop players. Cantwell was probably a prime example. He was probably one of our better players under previous management regime. And he wasn't shy just taking Cantwell off like 30 odd minutes into a game because it wasn't working. So he's got the ability to do it. He's the first manager that's actually taken Tav off during games. The weekend there was a prime example. Tav was having an absolute shocker, decides to take him off. We automatically start to play better. So I think if he comes in, he maybe drops Tav tomorrow night or at the weekend, whatever it may be, we're going to be stuck with Dessers tomorrow night, unfortunately, with Danilo not being in the squad. But maybe Hearts at the weekend if he starts with Danilo ahead of Dessers. I think if he goes and makes the big changes that Rangers fans want, and at the same time we start to actually see improved performances, the Rangers fans will quickly change their mind. I think we can be really passionate. I think when things aren't going away, we definitely vent our frustration. But I think once we start to see improvement, I think fans will start to change their tune. But I think just based on what we've seen over this 12-month period with Clement, doesn't look like he's going to change or deviate from what he wants to do. And if he continues with it, then he'll unfortunately face the same punishments that what Beale and Gio had went through. I think Gio's a prime example. Yeah, listen, it's great when things go well. Got us to the Europa League final. He just couldn't do it in the league, and he was let go from his position. And Clement probably just reminds me of Gio a lot. I think when you look at league performances, I think the inability to change how we approach games, I think he focuses too much on the opponents, which, listen, with all due respect to 90% of the teams in our league, we shouldn't really worry too much about what other teams are going to do. Like, we're Rangers, we've got a much higher wage bill, we've got much better standard of players. We should just go and impose ourselves and go try and dominate games, which I just think we look so cautious all the time.
Yeah, there's in recent times, there's not many managers that have kind of looked at a slightly different European squad to the league squad, which definitely is something that does need looking at. I remember under Alex McLeish, we used to wheel out Brahim Hemdani, didn't we? For the Champions League and not play him in the league because of the type of player he was. So, we used to look at things completely differently in games back then. But I think probably Gerrard was probably the last manager to really tweak things like that, have a bit of a difference in Europe to the way we play in the league. And that wasn't always necessarily perfect either, but it's quite scary how you kind of look at the past few managers we've had now in recent years, and they've all kind of gone the same way, so to speak. But yeah, no, definitely food for thought. Obviously, Curry is in the chat, so hi, Curry. He's clearly thinking of Halloween. He's yeah. What was the line from the film? It was paddle faster, I hear banjos. There we go. Right, got a few good more questions here. Ross, I'll bring you in on this one. With former FC20 captain Proper yet to reach levels he showed at previous clubs, maybe this doesn't suit Scottish football. Would you get Nasala more minutes in the first team when possible? So that's an interesting one. So we didn't really see much of Nsiala apart from pre-season, really, and some action in the B team. So, Ross, have you seen much of him of late? I don't think many people have they?
I mean, I can't say I have, to be brutally honest with you. Anything I've read about Clinton Nsiala has been about, guys that have more info on the B team than I do. I think the general consensus has been that he's got attributes, but he's not ready to play at this level yet. Despite coming through I think a pretty good academy at AC Milan, but I think that as in the comment about Proper, we're a bit of a really weird league to play in. I think for a defender, you need to have other things other than just being able to be a good footballer. I think perhaps Nsiala just needs to gain some more attributes. He will get that in the B team. I think he'll get parts of it, but Proper, I think, has just been a little bit of it's not been a good signing. I think his confidence has went off the cliff, and he has attributes that are very good. He's a very good passer of the football. I think he's probably the guy that they could replace the big 60-yard pass from Goldson that we liked as a tactic. Proper can do that, and he does have that. But when it comes to defending, sometimes I think there's some things that he's quite questionable about. His position at times can be a bit all over the shop. He's quite slow. He doesn't have the recovery pace of Balogun or the strength of Suter. He's like I say, he does have things, and there's a reason why he was the captain of a team that finished third in the Eredivisie last year. But again, to play in Scottish football, I think you need to have other attributes other than being able to kick a ball accurately. In terms of Nsiala, I think there needs to be looking at another centre half. I don't think he's ready to play at this level, and I don't think Proper's the long-term answer either.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because we haven't really seen too much of Nsiala. Obviously, like you say, he's come through a fantastic academy. There's definitely something that people have spotted over the years. But Proper at the minute, it isn't looking the part. And we've seen this, a lot of the correlations between him and Ben Davies. You can see, that they can play with the ball at their feet, which most managers kind of want in these kind of modern systems. But sometimes you think you just want some built guy that's just going to be able to thump the ball out, anytime the ball comes near him. But that, I think not a lot of managers like going down that route now, do they? But Mitch, what do you reckon? Would you give Nsiala minutes, do you think, or is it no?
He's 18, 19, hasn't played for any first team football in his career as of yet. I wouldn't necessarily be shocked to see him go somewhere on loan for the next 6 months. Arguably, I would quite like him to go somewhere like Airdrieonians to go and get taught under Rhys McCabe. I think there's a hell of a lot worse, managers to go and learn from. And learn the Scottish game from. I think in today's day and age, I think some of the criticism that Proper's come in for, I genuinely think is quite unjust towards him. I think his problem is he is actually quite an aggressive player. He loves a sliding tackle. He likes to come out, but I think sometimes right now there's clearly a bit of an issue in communication in the back line, whether that be from him and Suter or whether that be from he's maybe expecting more from Yefty out in the left back there to give him a bit more protection. And as we've seen, and again, not a knock on Yefty either, of he's a young 21-year-old boy, he's again learning his trade. And for me, I still think Yefty's more of a left winger than he is a left back. And it's going to take a fair bit. I think it's going to take a wee bit more, convincing for me to see Yefty on a left wing, seeing less games at left back and more games at left wing, to prove that theory, because we've seen on Sunday there, he kind of get himself all at 6s and 7s for the Motherwell goal. And again, but that's also going to happen given his age, so I do kind of allow for that. I think it's very easy to point a finger at Proper because he's new, he's came from a different league, and I think sometimes he's one of these players that's maybe arguably a bit guilty of being too intelligent for the league. And that's not a knock on his teammates, it's not a knock on the SPL. It's over in Holland, they've got a lot of one-touch pass and movement. They build out the back. They are the backbone, and they've also got a lot of centre-backs that like to move forward. Whereas he can't necessarily do that here because John Suter likes to bomb forward. So when you can't have both your centre-backs bombing forward because that'd be absolutely horrendous. that's how you leave that's how you could park two boats there that have got the steel inside the back, in the back line there. We can't do that. And I think Robin Proper had to come out the team for a minute, pretty much, just to kind of essentially readjust himself. But I think as well we shouldn't be relying on 37-year-old Leon Balogun. Like, love Leon to bits, but Leon for me is the guy that when you're playing 3 games in a week, he should be playing game 3 against the likes of Dundee United. That, and again, no disrespect to them, but that lower half of the SPL team, like, to be fair, you could probably put Leon in against 10 of the current SPL teams. Wouldn't really want to see him in another Old Firm. Reasons of pace, because Father Time is catching up with him. And I think there's probably just a little bit there with Proper, who's kind of very, very harshly copped the rough end of the stick. But Enciala's definitely nowhere near ready at the moment. And I do think, honestly, popping him out on loan in January somewhere, even somewhere that's not even Scotland, pop him into, a lower, even a League 2 team, a French League 2 team, or a kind of lower end French League 1 club. Put him somewhere out of the spotlight of Scotland, or go and put him in the Scottish Championship where he can go and cut his teeth with a bit less focus on what he does. Because again, he looks to have a lot of raw attributes, but we've not seen an awful lot of them. Let's go and get him some first team football first, without the big bright lights that have got a tendency to weigh very heavy on very young shoulders.
Yeah, no, that's once again a very good assessment there, Mitch. What do you reckon, Kev? Do you think is a Proper cut out for the SPFL? And would Enciala be somebody that could come in for him? Or there was a good question here as well. Sorry to pile up the questions on you, but obviously there was a question here that was saying obviously some players do take like 6 months or so to settle in the league. Could this just be a case of that with Proper? So would you reckon, will Proper have a future at Rangers, or will we look to offload possibly as soon as possible?
I think it probably still is too early to tell. I mean, granted, he's not had a particularly great start. I think he had an absolute shocker against St Johnstone. In all fairness, I thought he'd get bullied. And I really don't want to see my centre-backs be bullied in any game. I agree with a point Ross made. I think he is really good on the ball. So I think maybe in Europe it suited him. He's got space to make passes through the lines. I think he's great to have there. I do think he just lacks a sort of good bit of pace. And I think that the hard one is he's coming in following Goldson. And granted, I know Goldson never had a great final season, but Goldson was a great servant for us. And he was a good all-round centre-back. So I think it's really hard to follow that. So I think that certainly on what I've seen so far of Proper, he's been a downgrade on Goldson. And there's no getting away from that. Do I think he could get better in the future? I mean, I hope so. I think at his age, I'd expect him to settle a bit quicker than what he has already. And I think if it's going to take him 6 months to settle, then I would look to try and cash in if it's possible. I think at the age and the experience he's got, I would have fully expected him to settle probably quicker than what he has so far. I just don't know if he's got the physicality sometimes for the league. I think in Europe he's looked okay. I can't remember any poor performances put in for us in Europe. I think in the league he has certainly struggled with some of the physical strikers that, listen, 50% of the games you're playing in the SPFL, you're coming up against a big physical striker that wants to sort of throw you about. So I think that seems to be where he can struggle. Mitch makes a point about how he can be aggressive, but I think sometimes that's to his detriment. I think sometimes he does just try and dive in and try and win the ball, but a lot of the time he's either getting turned or he's having to commit a foul and pick up a yellow. I think St Johnstone game was one of the ones he did actually pick up a yellow before then injuring himself and then getting taken off. So I think, he can show that he can be aggressive, but it's to his detriment rather than something I've seen as a positive.
Yeah, it's a weird one because you tend to find with a lot of players that come into kind of Scotland, there's been some fairly decent footballers that have kind of struggled. Obviously we remember Amad Diallo. Obviously it was a couple of years ago. He's got a little bit older now and he's doing lots of great things in the Premier League. But you do see it sometimes. Some players do struggle to adapt to the physicality of the league. It's a very different league. Going to Dingwall on a Tuesday night, a lot of footballers won't experience that. But I would expect somebody like Proper top air. When I saw that we were looking at him, I thought, well, he's had a fantastic season. He's the captain of 20. They're finishing third. They've had a very good defensive record. But sometimes I think we just need some big burly guy that's going to be able to thump the ball away. Sometimes I think we do need that. It's not all about playing with the ball at your feet. I might be a little bit too old school, but yeah, no. Great questions that are coming in, guys. Keep them coming in the feed. There's loads of great questions, but I've got a good one here from Scotty. This will again, the Shankland questions coming round, but do we sign Lawrence Shankland on a pre-contract in January? So of course, if we can sign him on a pre-contract, then he would be on a free. Is it worth a punt, gents? So Ross, is it worth a punt?
At this moment in time, I would say yes. I know he's not been in, as we mentioned earlier, he's not been in the greatest form, but Hearts haven't been in the greatest form, and there was times last season where Shankland was kind of carrying them himself, and I know that's difficult to do when you're the kind of main man at a club like that, where you kind of do drag them up the table. I think this year they did struggle under Naismith. I think Neil Critchley's went in there and kind of taken the pressure off him a little bit, and I think he's kind of, I know he's not contributing goal scoring wise, but they're kind of starting to play better. Lawrence Shankland, I think, will score goals, and I think that's something at the moment that we're missing, is a guy who just is able to stick the ball in the back of the net. And he's not, we know he's not the greatest all-round footballer, but he can play, he can drop deep, he can link the play. I think, I'm sorry, Mitch, he can link it better than Dessers. I think that he's a good footballer, and he's not coming in to, if he's not coming in to be the next first choice number 9, then on a free, I think we would be, I think we'd be very, very remiss to not consider it. Just considering the amount of goals that we've had on the treatment table, or potential goals, on the treatment table, in Danilo, and the inexperience of Egeman. But it kind of harks back to a point that Mitch said, and he's 100% spot on. Cyril Dessers has had to play every game, regardless of whether or not the situation is right for him, and that's been unfair. And I think, and I know, like I say, I know I've been kind of harsh, but it's spot on, is that he's had to play in games that don't suit him, and it's been unfair, and that's where he has been. And there's been parts of that where he has been unfairly criticised. 100%. When we're playing games where we have to play a little bit deeper. Listen, Mitch, 100%, I agree with you. The problem I had with him is that the games where he can make a difference, and sometimes the ball's bouncing off him, I think you get more. I think the ball attracts to Shankland better. I think he's better at keeping it in and linking play. The problem with that is that if you sign Shankland, just hypothetical scenario for Scotty, if we sign Shankland and you lump the ball up to him, you still have the same issue, is that if you don't get guys near him, and you don't have runners from the 10, from the wide, from the midfield to support him, we're just going to be in the same scenario, that you're not going to support him. We were seeing a clip of we've seen the clip from the Aberdeen game where Bajrami takes the ball on the left hand side and he runs up, and I think it was still on Twitter, and he gets to the edge of the 80-yard box, and there's nobody in the screen. There's nobody there to support him. You need to still change the tactics regardless of who's playing up front. Shankland is more a guy that you can play the ball into, and he'll kind of drop and bring other guys in. But if you don't have the runners from midfield, it doesn't matter. If Clement is willing to change his tactics to allow runners for the midfield, then I think it's an absolute no-brainer.
A no-brainer, I guess. On a free, I think on a free,
absolutely.
On a free, 100%.
Yeah.
Mitch, yourself, I know this might push your favourite man out. What do you reckon? Shanks on a free?
No. Wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. And I've said this though even since January last year. He's a man that I think he's found his level as a player. And, to be pretty crude and kind of candid about it, if he was as good as everybody in Scotland thinks he is, in the summer there where he had a year left on his contract, he would have been whipped away down to the English Championship if somebody really wanted him. But he's not. He's still here. He's not playing particularly well this season. He's not looking particularly fit either, which, let's be honest, when we're playing 3 games in a week, that's a bit of a worry in its own right, especially given the current injury situation that we're only ever a few injuries away from a complete bomb scare as a team. I think he doesn't fit the current mould. He doesn't fit the current transfer model. If we're going to bring another striker in, and it is a big if, let's play hypotheticals. There's still better younger strikers out there on foot that, for me, you would get a far better return on now and down the road. And I think Lawrence Shankland has probably found his peak as a player. He's found that club where he's incredibly comfortable. He gets everything that he wants. I'll be honest with you, I would not be entirely surprised if before Christmas we've seen that he signed a new contract at Hearts. I think maybe some of what we've seen has maybe been him putting the arm up Hearts' back to get whatever money that he's due. Fair play to him. But again, if he was that good as everybody thinks that he is up here, he would have already been away in the summer by now.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it's still splitting. We're going to wrap up in just a second, but Kev, we'll let you have the final word. I know we've already mentioned Shankland earlier on. Still yes for you?
It would be a yes. I think one would need to go out. My preference would be Dessers. Again, sorry, Mitch. But I think if Dessers was to go, I think, and Danilo was to be fit between now and January, I think I wouldn't mind it. Come end of the season, I think it gives you a good other alternative within the league. I think you're getting a proven goal scorer within the SPFL, which, listen, that's not a bad thing, I think, to have as a backup striker, with then having Danilo as the main man.
Yep, no, well said, Kev, well said. Right, well, that's just about all we've got time for this evening. We're nearly at an hour, so it's been a lot of great chat about Rangers. But I'd just like to thank all the guests tonight, Ross, Mitch and Kev. You've been absolutely fantastic. And I'd just like to thank you all at home. Don't forget Premier VPN. It's a fast, safe and private VPN, so do get subscribing. Just like to thank you all, guys, for your contributions tonight, and thank you all out there for watching. And as Ross would normally say, every night is a Rangers Journal night, and tonight certainly was. Take care, guys. See you later.